TNT.
And there I was, and there I am again. My next guest is absolutely phenomenal. I've had the absolute delight of speaking to her on several occasions, and each time she tells me of the wonderful work that she does and all the people that she helps as part of being CEO of Due Process International. It is a leading human rights advocate, crisis manager, commitment place, and policy consultant. I shouldn't try and change the words. I should have read what's in front of me. Focusing on the UAE and wider Middle East. She is the founder and CEO of British-based organisation Detained in Dubai, which have helped almost 20,000 victims. Wow, that is huge. 20,000 victims of injustice over the past 13 years. And Due Process International and IPEX, Interpol and extradition reform. Radha Stirling is also hosts the Gulf Injustice podcast, and you can find her online at Radha, R-A-D-H-A, Stirling, S-T-I-R-L-I-N-G, at radhastirling.com. We're going to be talking today about the plight of, in fact, we'll get right into it. Radha Stirling, how are you?
Very well. Great to see you again, and on some good news as well.
I'm all about good news. Yes. I was hoping for some good news out of France on the weekend. That wasn't quite forthcoming, but somebody who I've interviewed myself, who I like, whose plight is always on my mind, and I hope it is resolved to her satisfaction, is Tara Reade and those historic claims, against Joe Biden. Let's get right into it.
Right. So Tara Reade has been in Russia for over the past year. She went over there. She published a book called Left Out, and it was about her allegations against Joe Biden for sexual assault that happened when she was his Senate aide. Now, because of these allegations, the Democrat Party rallied around him. They wanted him to become president and launched basically the power of the judicial system against her. They impaneled a grand jury. She doesn't even know what for. They subpoenaed her social media records, and she wouldn't have even known about that, except that Twitter at the time actually wrote to her and said, we've had to give over this information. She was then spoken to by Congressman Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wanted her to testify in Congress about her sexual assault. And of course, Tara's case is quite famous. She's been on Tucker Carlson 4 times, on Megyn and Kelly and various other shows. So they wanted to do anything that they could to prevent her testimony in Congress at that time. And Tara Reade's allegations and the fact that she didn't get the kind of support that everyone else got with the Me Too movement essentially disbanded the whole movement. So that was quite incredible in itself. Then she went to Russia for a short 2 weeks, and during her time there, she was warned that if she comes back to the United States, she's going to be arrested. And she wasn't told why, but it was going to happen. And she received this information from several credible sources, including members of the Republican Party, intelligence officers, and journalists, for people who had worked for the military and still worked in intelligence. So she took this threat extremely seriously. She didn't want to return and be, thrown at the bottom of a cell and under some, I don't know, terrorist act or some sort of foreign spy agent, anything. I mean, at that time, they were just making up anything and holding people without charge, without trial, and without access to legal teams. So she sought asylum in Russia while she was there for a short 2 weeks. That ended up going on for a year. And there was a time we didn't think she'd ever be able to come back, or that, we would have to wait for Joe Biden to die before she could feel potentially safe again. So what we did, we immediately, made communications with Interpol, with the United Nations. We lodged filings in the United States with the FBI and various other law enforcement agencies who we felt had been used and weaponized against Tara Reade to silence her. Since then, Joe Biden has obviously, as we've seen with the debate and even leading up to that debate, he's lost a lot of support. They know that he's not going to do very well at the next election, and people are starting to, his own party is sort of going against him. There's a lot of members who would like to see him gone. So it was a perfect opportunity, combined with the legal actions that we'd already taken, for Tara to feel finally safe to it was the safest possible time to go back to the US right before the election. Joe Biden's not going to be able to do anything against her because it would be so highlighted in the media, and it would again go back into her claims of sexual assault, and that's not going to be good for the Democrat Party right before an election. So it was very concerning. She was she did think that there was a great chance that she would be arrested at the airport on arrival back in the US, but she was desperate to see her daughter. It had been over a year and she was getting married. She didn't want to miss out on the wedding. So she decided to take that risk against a lot of advice from diplomats, from, Russian politicians saying, look, it's really risky. Are you sure you want to do that? You're safe here. You've got asylum. But she is American. Her daughter lives there and she did want to go back. So the other benefit of her arriving safely in the US is that she is now able to make a criminal referral to the Attorney General in Washington, D.C., for him to open an investigation, serious investigation, into the allegations that she's made against Joe Biden and to subpoena the evidence, because she made, official reports at the time of the incident that are locked up at Delaware University, and the Attorney General would be able to subpoena those records, and perhaps finally there'd be an investigation, maybe even justice, if the AG determined that Joe Biden was even young enough to stand trial.
Once you understand how the world really works, it becomes really obvious, parts of it. Now, a year ago, if Tara Reade was to say to me, do you think I should go back to America? My answer would have been absolutely not. As you alluded to, after that debate, I would have said you will be not only that, but more than welcome, completely safe, because the left, whilst those who represent them in the mainstream media are certainly not rocket scientists, those who run the show behind the scenes are very, very clever. And whilst they turned a blind eye to the state, the health state of Joe Biden over the last couple of years, when they so obviously threw him under the bus and wanted done with him, and by way of putting him in that particular set of circumstances where the world could see exactly what his mental state was. And of course, then their left-wing media being given the green light to no longer just ignore it, but to make a point of it, because they really do wish to replace him. They've made that decision, and it would be extremely, extremely convenient for them to have somebody like Tara Reade go to the Senate and testify in the Senate at the moment. It would do their work for them. So certainly no surprises there. But at the end of the day, I mean, my heart is with this, and I just hope that Tara gets that resolution that she's wanted and hoped for so long. The fact that she can return to America and be with her family is just the icing on the cake.
Yes. I mean, what I've noticed recently is a lot of political commentators who have been quite harsh towards Biden. After that debate, they've gone easy on him. They've said, oh, he's just an old man with dementia. He's probably okay. Let him go out with dignity and that kind of thing. And I think, it's important to remember that this isn't just because he's aging doesn't mean he's been fine up until then. I think that's actually outrageous. We've had, leading up to the last election, we had suppression of the media. We had him, employing or instructing his intelligence agencies to confirm that the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake and Russian disinformation. I mean, there's been a whole legacy of corruption here, and also the assault of Tara Reade that was never investigated by his own party. So I think it's important not to simply put him in the barrel of, oh, he was a good person, he was a great president. I mean, his presidency was terrible. His foreign policy has been a disaster. And the economy, absolutely, he's wasting money left, right, and centre. So I think it's important to remember that just because he is in decline doesn't mean that before that he was a good president, and the only issue is his age.
Absolutely. I've got a bunch of things I'd love to chat with you about. We have a short news break to get to. Radha Stirling, please don't go anywhere. Likewise, with the viewing and listening audience, we'll be back right after this break here at TNT.
This July, we're taking life seriously. Cardiac arrest is scary and more common than you might think. Did you know that every year nearly 9 million people will experience a cardiac event outside of hospital? Would you know what to do? I'm Australian actor Steve Bastoni, and I'm urging everyone to learn CPR as part of our Don't Die July campaign. Visit don'tdiejuly.com and sign up today, because you can't put a price on life.
Why not give TNT Radio a follow? We're on all major social platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gab, and Getter. Help us get the word out as we cover the biggest topics of our time, right here on today's News Talk. TNT Radio. TNT Radio.
selfless people. I love selfless people, those who advocate for those who have been hard done by, those who work so hard to get justice. And Radha Stirling epitomises that. She is the CEO of Due Process International and a leading human rights advocate in this particular case for one Tara Reade. Lots of things, to say here. I mean, again, all the left-wing media, throwing him under the bus, and Biden I'm talking about. Now, Trump was actually very gentle with Joe Biden, because why insult a man? Why kick somebody when he's down? I mean, take the moral high ground and just let Joe Biden be the person who puts Joe Biden down. They're telling us he has Parkinson's. I would strongly state that dementia or Alzheimer's is more so the case. The sad thing from the perspective of Tara Reade, and having known people, and I will talk in general here, who have had dementia and Alzheimer's, towards the end, that person is no longer present. They are gone. Their body may be functioning, but quite literally that person, or most of that person to some extent, is no longer there. Therefore, even if justice is to be found for one Tara Reade, in fact, no, I'll speak in general here, just so I don't get myself into trouble. In general, if somebody was to be assaulted, sexually, possibly by somebody historically, if that justice comes when somebody is at the late stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, one could argue that the person who did it is not the person who will suffer. Certainly, we'd like to see justice done, but I think at the end of the day, would we just be happy with an admission that this actually occurred and that she was a victim of this guy and who he used to be historically? Because I don't think there's that much left of him right now.
No, I mean, realistically, he's not going to be prosecuted for this, but it would be good if there was an investigation and that the records that she made at the time, the complaints that she made while she was working, were exposed, because he used the influence of the media to go after Tara, to damage her reputation, to call her a Russian spy. She had nothing to do with Russia when she was sexually assaulted by Biden. So it would be great to get those records to show that he weaponized the media against her, to damage her, to intimidate her into silence, to ruin her ability to get work, and to hurt her family. He also weaponized the DOJ, the FBI against her. And that's what, really warrants the investigation. We cannot have these agencies being politicized by whichever party is in power at the time. And having people thrown in jail, as we've seen, unfairly prosecuted. There's no equal application of the law anymore in the US. And you can see, a Supreme Court judgment comes down, the Democrats are complaining about it because they're saying it's politicized. A judgment comes down in New York against Donald Trump and they're saying, oh, it's completely independent. It's an independent judiciary. You've got to trust the system. And when it works against them, it's the opposite. So this is something that absolutely needs to be rectified within the United States, along with, obviously, election integrity. And I fully support voter ID that they're trying to push through now. But I think it's really the system that needs investigation, and perhaps this referral regarding Tara Reade may lead to that and lead to that reform.
I hope so. And I mean, I can think of a million practical examples, but not one better than this particular one, because it was, in fact, Tara Reade who led me when I was researching to have an interview with her. And I watched the Australian 60 Minutes interview, and there was one of her friends historically had been told at the time, yes, I have been sexually assaulted by Joe Biden. And when asked, were you told that then? Yes. Do you believe it? Absolutely. And then the question came up, and it was a bit out of left field. I thought, why would you ask somebody, would you still vote for Biden then? And when her answer was, yes, I would. And that made me aware of the fact that you're not voting for anybody, you're really voting against somebody else. But see, until we have this thing resolved, and it is common knowledge, if we can prove that that is the case, then people like that cannot publicly make a statement like, oh, yes, I would still vote for Joe Biden. So just little things that have big consequences. I mean, it all ties in with the psyche, and it's all about perception. And the perception of Joe Biden needs to be, historically corrected so everybody knows what type of person we were dealing with, or possibly on some level still are.
I mean, it's so manipulative. I mean, for example, abortion, you can see it all over X. You've got all of the celebrities sharing it, saying, if you care about women's reproductive rights, vote for Biden. At the end of the day, nothing's going to change. He's essentially been in power for 12 years. What has that done for, abortion laws or anything? It's gone back to the states, so you would lobby the states, or it's the Supreme Court, and that's already done. So that's already made a ruling. Nothing will change regarding abortion rights, regardless of which party is voted in at the next election. So there's so much deception and manipulation. I'd like to see us talking about those policies that count, the foreign policy that's so important, the diplomacy. It's embarrassing having Joe Biden or anyone who kind of supports that puppetry. We vote for a president. That's why the US has those presidential elections. It's not just voting for local reps and that leader being appointed. In the US, we want that president. We don't want this shadow government that we don't even know who it is. Is it the CIA? Is it, President Obama? We just don't know.
I'm detecting, and again, I've got nothing to base this on other than intuition. It is yet to let me down. I'm feeling a struggle in the left of politics, those who wish for Biden to stay because they control him and therefore they get their will across the line, and others who would like to replace him because they have their own people they would like to see in play. So this narrative will play very well into one side of that argument. There are those who, should Joe Biden and his minders decide absolutely that he's not going anywhere, I think that they will be some of your biggest supporters pushing this to the fore and getting this particular story so it's so mainstream you can't possibly avoid it. What is the timeline for what's happening now in the US with this? And do you see it getting pushed up as a result of something that I may or may not be right about that I just suggested?
Oh gosh, I mean, at this point, he's really digging his heels in. He wants to stay in power, so and it will have to happen quickly if they're going to, appoint someone else to replace him. It's going to be quite a last-minute disaster, but also really confusing for the population. I mean, we've had a long time to get to know Trump, to get to know Biden, and even RFK. So whoever they put in next, who are they? What are their policies? What are their history? Are we even going to have enough time to consider what their policies are going to be, and to be able to elect someone who's brand new? It's just going to be a complete chaos. So I really hope that they sort that out soon. I don't mind if Biden continues to run, although I think it's humiliating. I don't think we should be putting someone forward as the president of the United States who can't even hold a diplomatic conversation with a foreign leader. And we've seen the decline of relations with other countries. We've seen Saudi, getting rid of the US dollar. We've seen BRICS getting closer together, other countries joining forces, and the US ultimately losing that sort of power. So I think it's damaging to the country, and I think that absolutely a decision should be made not to go ahead with him. However, I'm not very hopeful for the alternatives that they would put in place because, you wouldn't want Kamala Harris. I'm sure no one likes her. So you'd want someone, but again, they're just going to be a puppet to the agenda of the Democrat Party. There's nothing individual about them. They are going to be pushing the same globalist policies, the same economic and foreign policy that's leading to the decline of America and its allies.
Yeah, I call it group non-think. But I strongly suspect, I feel that should a certain set of circumstances come to be the case, that this could blow up absolutely huge, and I wouldn't be one bit surprised if that is the case. And I think Tara Reade will do very well by that, and I hope that is the case and that justice is served. But I can think of no better advocate for her than yourself, Radha Stirling. Thank you very much for you and the work that you do as part of Due Process International on behalf of everyone listening and watching here at TNT.
Thanks. Great to talk to you. Speak soon. Thank
you. And if there are any developments in this, please get straight back on. We'll get you straight back on. It's something I would really like to follow as it develops, and I feel that it shall imminently. Thank you very much, Radha Stirling.